Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of HBO's original series, The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 3, entitled The Path. And this episode is dealing with the aftermath of everything that took place in Episode 2 of this season, which was exciting, thrilling, action packed, and emotionally draining. Uh, it was a episode that has caused a lot of stir for fans of this show. You have a contingent of fans who, after episode 2, declared that they're not watching the show anymore after what took place in episode 2. And you have a contingent of fans that have decided to send death threats to the young actress who plays Abby on the show after her character murdered Joel, uh, played by Pedro Pascal. Yes, actual people sent actual death threats to this lady on social media, to whereas HBO and the showrunners of The Last of Us had to release a statement telling people to stop. It's just a TV show. Relax. And I echo those thoughts. Relax. I understand people are upset. I guess it didn't impact me and a lot of other people who played the game and knew that this was going to happen, that this was coming. And so it didn't really hit like that for me and a lot of other people. But for those who are just watching the show as fans of the show, yeah, this caught them off guard. And I get it. I get it. If I was in your shoes, I'd probably be upset too, but not upset to the point where I'm sending death threats to the actress of this character. But it is a lot. It was a lot to deal with last episode. On top of Joel's death, we had the attack from the infected on the town of Jackson, Wyoming, that caused a lot of destruction and death to the residents there. So we needed an episode to kind of breathe, kind of relax a little bit. And this was that episode. And, it's good on them because we needed that. We needed this episode in a worse way. There was no action. There was no, gigantic set pieces, or we didn't even get to see an infected on this episode. And that's fine because we needed to breathe. And what I really, really appreciated from this episode, we didn't get any flashbacks of Pedro Pascal as Joel. We didn't see a picture of him. We saw the dead body, but we didn't see his face. And of course, his face is all messed up from the torture that he went through and whatnot. But we didn't get to see all that. This just focused on the impact on the characters. Ellie, Tommy, Dana, and the rest of the town folk over in Jackson. And I thought that was a very smart decision by the showrunners of The Last of Us. So this episode 3, picks up, I guess, the next day after all that took place in episode 2. We get, how can I describe him? A distraught Tommy here, who comes into this makeshift mortuary where all the dead bodies are gathered from the attack. And lo and behold, Joel body is there, and we have somebody there who's about to wash off the body and whatnot, clean the body up. And Tommy walks in, and she just hands the cloth over to Tommy and walks out. Didn't say anything. No words were exchanged. It was just a nod of respect. And he walks over to Joel, and he lifts up the blanket and looks at him. And then he goes to start wiping him off. And while he's wiping off his arm, we see the watch. And he as he's wiping the blood off of him, he hits the watch and he looks at the watch. And uh I mean, Gabriel Luna, he gives an awesome performance here. He looks at the watch and he's just staring at Joel and he's trying to fight back his emotions, keep his emotions in check here. And you can see the pain behind his face, the face he's trying to put on, and then the real face that's behind that. And he just says, give Sarah my love. He tells him, give Sarah my love, because we know that Sarah, who is Joel's daughter, or was Joel's daughter, gave that to Joel the day that all hell broke loose with the infected. And that was the last thing he had gotten from his daughter. And it was broken. It was broken on that day as well, but he still wears it. And he wore it literally to his dying day. And his brother knew that. And for him to have that last word, give Sarah my love, like, almost broke me. It almost broke me down, but I held on. I held on. And then we get the opening title sequence, with the I guess you could say the graphics of the infected spreading. And for a season and 2 episodes, we got a very clear little portion of that opening title sequence. At the end of the sequence, we see 2 spores sprout up, and it's like in a human form. And we always assumed that was Joel and Ellie just standing alone, and the Last of Us title pops up. And normally, sometimes, I'm not going to say normally, but sometimes I'll skip that and go straight into the episode. But tonight, I stayed on it because I wanted to see if they were going to do it. And they did. We went through the whole title sequence and it was normal. And then we get to the part where the 2 little spores sprout up. And it was just one. And then The Last of Us pops up. I broke. that's when reality set in. I was like, oh my God, they actually did it. I really told my wife, I said they did it. And she kind of had her head down. She wasn't paying attention. She was like, what? And I rewinded and showed her. I was like, I don't know if you ever paid attention, but normally 2 of these things sprout up. Watch what happens. And then it happened. And she was like, oh. And I was like, oh, I can't. They did it. And it was just a reality check. It was a real gut punch. It really just took me out. I had to pause for a second and get my composure together because I was like, man, this is real. Joel is gone. And this is someone who knows this. I knew this with the first season, before the first season even started. I knew that this was going to happen. This was inevitably going to happen. And now that it's here, it didn't prepare me. I still was not prepared. But that was the moment when reality set in for me. And so we after the sequence, we get Ellie. We get Ellie, who at this point, I guess she had broken ribs or whatever, and they're from her getting kicked in the ribs last episode, and she went through it as well. And so she's kind of sedated, and then she wakes up screaming. And at first, like in the trailer, leading up to tonight's episode, I thought that she was screaming because she saw Joel's body in the hospital with her. And for a week now, I'm like, why did they have the body in there with her? I was wondering why, but that's editing for the trailer, because that's not what she saw. She woke up and she started screaming because she was having a PTSD moment. She was thinking back to when Joel was murdered. She was envisioning that moment and she started screaming. So immediately we're like, okay, she's trapped in this moment. This is pure hell for her. the one father figure that she knows, the only man that, well, the only person, man, male or female, to ever protect her, to do all this for her, to love her, is gone. The one person left in this world is gone. And it was so powerful. That scream, Bella Ramsey, man, that reaction was powerful, man. It was powerful. So they had to sedate her again and uh put her down. So now we get to a moment where and I'm trying not to go through every part of this episode, but it was so much happened in this episode that was really poignant and cool, and I liked a lot, even though this wasn't a action packed episode. They weren't running from infected and all this here. It was none of that, but this was a really good episode, really good episode. uh the the little conference between Gail and Ellie. Gail, played by Catherine O'Hara, who's the psychiatrist. And, before Ellie can leave the hospital, she's talking to her and trying to see if she's all right to leave. And once again, Bella Ramsey doing God's work here. She she puts on this facade like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's cool. And she's telling Gail everything she needs to know. Now, normally a psychiatrist would be like, okay, you're BSing me. I don't have time for this. Gail knows that Ellie is lying, but at this point, Gail is not your typical therapist, because this isn't a typical situation, and they're not living in a typical world. And so she's like, okay, whatever, go, go. And so later on, when Gail is talking to Tommy, and after the council had voted against sending out these men to go after Abby and the WLF, he talks to Gail, and Gail's like, well, Ellie's a liar. And and Tommy's trying to defend her. He's like, well, there's a difference between someone lying and being a liar. And Gail's like, yeah, you're right, but she's a liar. you know I know what she's gonna do. And Tommy is like, I know she's gonna do something stupid. And for those of us who know the game, know that Tommy, they did a lot of changes here as per the game. We know in the game, Tommy was the one who was with Joel in Abby's cabin or lodge or whatever it's called when Abby kills Joel, but Tommy was knocked out. So it was Tommy there, not Dana, but they changed it for the show. And so when they got back, and I'm talking in the game here, when they got back to Jackson, Tommy kind of helps Ellie, defy Jackson and go off to go find Abby. Here he kind of does in a way, but not in the way that he does in the game. He knows that Ellie is not going to be stopped. She's going to go after these people. But he's in a conflict as well, because deep down he wants to go after Abby too. He wants to go after these people that killed his brother. And these two past episodes with Gabrielle Luna as Tommy, he's really been shining here. I loved him last episode. I thought that was a great episode to showcase him in this role, but this episode really touched in on Gabrielle Luna's acting ability, because he was so conflicted. The character of Tommy is so conflicted right now, because he wants to go after these people. He wants vengeance. He wants justice for what happened to his brother. But at the same time, Jackson needs him. Jackson has just suffered a catastrophic attack, and they're hurting right now. So he has a responsibility to stay there, but he also morally has a responsibility to be his brother's keeper, and this episode really shows Tommy in this conflict emotionally, and it was a wonderful thing to watch. My other part of this episode, or probably my favorite part of this episode, was dealing with Ellie and the character of Seth. And Seth is the, I guess, bartender who, you know, had the homophobic slurs in the first episode when not Abby, when Ellie and Dana kissed at that dance and got into it. The one Joel punched and, caused all that hoopla at that dance. Now in the game, um, Seth does apologize, but he was made to apologize just like he was on the show. But that was pretty much it for that character. But here on the show, they gave him this episode to kind of shine. And Robert John Burke plays this character. And, I've been a fan of his for a long time. Often wondered to myself internally why he hasn't, or why he never did rise to the heights that I thought he would be. He took over the role of RoboCop in that horrible RoboCop 3 after Peter Waller didn't want to do it anymore, or didn't want to do that one because it was stupid, and I understood. But John Robert John Burke took over that role, and he was all right. But I really loved him in Thinner, that Stephen King movie where he was this big fat lawyer and he was cursed by these I think they were gypsies, or it was indigenous people, or I forgot. It's been a while since I watched it, but it gave him this curse where he would be thinner, and he would constantly get thinner to the point that where he'll wither away. And I loved him in that role. But in any event, he did an exceptional job here. In the council meeting, he stood up and sided with Ellie and sided with the cause. It wasn't so much Ellie and it wasn't so much Joel, because remember, the last time he saw Joel was his fist coming at his eye. And so it isn't like Joel was his his buddy, but it was the call. It was the cause. And he really championed it, and it was to no avail because the council voted against it. But he is the one to help Ellie. After Dana said, "Look, I know a guy that can get us supplies to go off on a journey," and lo and behold, it was Seth. And the moment that got me was when he opened the gate and they were about to leave, and he reached out his hand to Ellie, and to shake, and Ellie shook his hand as just a moment of respect, as a moment of acknowledgement of each other's uh, 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 dedication, not only to this cause, but also as a form of a true apology, as per the apology we got in a previous episode that he was forced to give. This was the real apology, and it was moving, man, because he didn't have to say the words, she didn't have to acknowledge it and all this here, but it was real. That handshake was real, and it was great. I loved it. The majority of this episode, to my knowledge, from the Last of Us Part 2 video game, I don't think any of this existed. I don't think none of this episode was a part of the game, but it was still a good addition to this season, to this show, and I think it sets up a lot going forward, especially the last half of this show, or should I say the last scene, where we get to Seattle and we see that the wolves, that the WLF, is bigger than what they anticipated. This is actually an army that they are going up against. And so Ellie and Dana has bitten off more than they can chew. And so it's going to be exciting to see what happens next. What more are we going to experience, and how Ellie and Dana are going to navigate through Seattle with this contingent. But this was a fire episode in my eyes. I mean, on an emotional level, coming from such an emotionally draining episode as episode 2, to come to this one and kind of breathe a little bit but get a lot of story and just sit back and kind of relax before we rev it back up again. But that's my feelings on episode 3. I would love to know, how are you feeling about episode 3? Do you feel a little better? Have you come down from your depression? I wasn't until I watched it. I was all right until I watched this episode, but it's a good draining. It's not bad to the point where I'm mad, but it's good. It's more of a in memoriam, if you will, without being a just a emotionally Joel episode, to whereas they try to milk all of your sad emotions out of you. But I enjoyed it. How about you? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3, entitled The Path. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.